and welcome everybody. I think we are live. So welcome Darrell and Deanna.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, can everybody in the chat hear everybody?
Yeah. Like, there's a chance that Robin's sound isn't coming through, which is going to be hilarious.
I think it's coming through. Let's see, it says Darrell soft, so let me turn that up. All right, how about talk now, Darrell?
Okay, yeah. Like, I'm always talking, so.
I did have the desktop audio down, so that should help. All right, so we are here. We are here for the first Q&A for Tharkold on Game On Tabletop. So everybody, I assume if you're here, you know about it. Otherwise, you just got a notification from our normal streams, and if you're here from that, then welcome. So we're here to talk about the kind of changes in the map. So let's switch over here so we can show folks what we're talking about, and we'll go into our small videos, and so here is this is the new map, but let's look at the old map.
By the awesome Alita Saxon, as usual.
Yeah.
Shout out to our art department.
That is. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
so this is the old one. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about this map that we're looking at right now.
Go ahead, Deanna. You're mistress of maps.
So this is the map for day 90. So 3 months after the invasion started, and it features a relatively small realm that the High Lord controls, which is down the south there, and you see the Stellai zones. And then this large area called the Blasted Lands, and that is a mixed core Earth Tharkold zone, and is full of radiation and abominations and strewn, destroyed Maelstrom Bridge from when President Volkov nuked the bridge that connected Tharkold to core Earth, and so that's been sitting around for basically at least the first year.
Right. And so, and the backstory behind all this, when we were setting up the cosms, and a lot of different people had input on how they would be, and I actually didn't know that so much of what we did with Tharkold came from Steve Kinson. Like, Shane and I had talked about it a bunch, but I didn't know that connection. So we've been working with Steve on all of these, Delphi missions and stuff for years. And as soon as Shane said that, I'm like, wait, that was his? Well, son of a gun! I did not know that. And my contribution, which I'm inordinately proud of, was nuking it in the first place, because we had the setup for it, and like, it's really cool, right? Because you've got this kind of Eastern Promises vibe to it, and this very Cold War thing happening. But we couldn't quite connect the dots between, why is this a Cold War, right? Like, these are like these 12-foot tall techno demons with super weapons that come flying in and surprise everyone, and all this stuff like goes really bad. How do we get from that to, okay, maybe let's at least pretend to be friends. Like, let's like chill in Netflix for a couple months. Like, how do we get there? And I was like, well, this game, everybody always wondered, why don't you just nuke a Maelstrom Bridge? Like, and in some cosms that's super obvious, right? Because you just can't. In the Living Land, nukes don't work. So it's like, we try to nuke a Maelstrom Bridge, in the Living Land. And it's like, well, it doesn't go off. Wah wah. But, in a technological zone, like the Cyber Papacy or Tharkold, why not? Any org could do that. Someone should at least try. And then the thought was like, well, probably somebody tried and it failed. And I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if somebody tried and it succeeded? And the result was so much worse than anyone imagined. They're like, okay, we are never doing this again. This was a terrible idea. Take that off the table. And so, like, we started with that, and I just, like, pitched it to Shane in this email. Like, so I've been thinking about this, and, like, what if we did that? And his, like, response, like, you could, like, read in the email that, All right, let's play with that. And the things that came out of that was like, hey, if we had, radioactive evil fallout from this, then that gives us an excuse to cover all this territory that, Stella are meant to convert populations, right? Like you put them where there are people and you drain the possibility energy from the people. So in a place like northern Russia, where you just got like vast amounts of territory, but there's not really any reason to conquer it. Like if you're a demon, you're like, I don't really care. Like, why am I expending the energy to take over that territory just so you boneheads can go and venture in it? Like, man. But,
right.
By having the fallout blow north, now it's like, okay, they didn't have to do this on purpose. Like, it's just a mess now. And everyone's like, well, I mean, we could do something with it, but really it's just junk. And so then you get your kind of Mad Max wasteland thing. And it all worked out very well. Like, almost like we planned it. When it was kind of a last-minute addition. Like, it was towards the end of the process that we came up with that twist. So,
nice.
Like, that's the backstory to the original map and why it's so weird. And I gave Deanna fits because she was the one placing the Stella. And I said, by the way, we're going to need this new thing with this whole blobby area up at the top. And she's like, what?
All right. So, folks, if you are in the chat here, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them now, and we will get to them shortly. So in between this map and the next map that we're going to show in a minute, kind of give us a summation of what's happened, I guess, in the past year. Tharkold.
I'm just waiting for the map.
Well, that's what I say. I want to, like, between those two, like, between that time, and then I'll throw up the map when you're, let me know when you're ready, and I'll throw up the other map.
In general, they've started expanding again. So the whole thing with the détente was like, okay, yeah, they had this nuke. It was terrible for both sides, and they needed to like pull back for a minute and be like, look, this is a catastrophe for everyone, but if we kind of work side by side on this, you get something out of it, we get something out of it, and it's like we'll move forward together in that way, knowing full well we'll stab each other in the back as soon as it becomes, viable for either of us. But and while that détente was going on, there wasn't a lot of expansion, right? Like that's part of their cooperation is the techno-demons can't really be like, cool, we're going to cooperate now, and then like expand a bunch of territory. It's like, we were buddies. What are you doing over there? Like that kind of ends that. And so this is one of the reasons why it was critical to move to the second phase of Tharkold, which fans of the original game know Cronod does not last that long in the original, and a new High Lord takes his place. In the original, that was Jezreel, like a humanoid slave that rises up to kind of take his place. And the spin that we put on it this time was there isn't a single candidate that just takes over. It's, well, she kills him like she did before, but there's a lot of factors of a lot of different factions saying, well, I mean, yeah, you got him and we're happy about that, but there's no way a slave gets to be High Lord, right? Like, I mean, that's great and all, but I'm a 12-foot tall techno demon. I'm not taking orders from you. Like, you're not that tough. And meanwhile you've got Volkov who's like, hey, I mean, technically I was kind of half in charge too, so like
so
this should still be me.
So that brings us to this point. So Jezreel kills Cranod, and now we have this cool new map. So here's the new map, and so what is going on here?
Yeah, so and Deanna, please interrupt me like at any time because I'm all blab blah 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 blah.
Sure.
But the whole idea is it's the darkness device that chooses its High Lord, right? Like the High Lord thinks they're in charge, but really the darkness device is choosing it. Cronod would never die if his darkness device was behind him. But his darkness device is like, you're not getting me new territory. Like, you're not the guy for this anymore. As soon as someone stabs him, the darkness device goes, cool, backs up, and he dies, right? And so now you've got these 3 different sort of major players that all want to be that next High Lord, and they've got to prove themselves to the Darkness device. Like, whoever gets the support of the Darkness device wins, no matter their relative power, right? Like, if Volkov ends up with that Darkness device, it doesn't matter that Jezreel's twice as fast as a human and has blades that can cut him in half. It doesn't matter that Thrachen's 12 feet tall and has a flamethrower built into his wrist. The Darkness device trumps that, right? And so they're all trying to say, look, I'm your guy. I'm the person that's going to give you the most energy. So they all start putting up Stella in different directions. Thrachen goes north into that crappy, blasted land that no one really cares about, but like, it's there on the table, right? Like, well, I can do this, right? I can put Stella up, and that's going to get me something. And Volkov kind of goes into Europe, which irritates like all of his, core Earth allies. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, you're taking half of Europe down. What's going on here? He's like, nope. Like, it's cool. Like, this is a long game, everybody. Just trust me on this. This is going to be better off. We're all going to be better off if I get this, this power. So, like,
narrator
cool.
goes, they don't trust him.
Right. Yeah, and also Morgan Freeman says, and it wasn't cool. And then, Jezreel goes basically the only direction that's left, where she's going east and southerly, just because she can. And there's these big natural barriers to all the Ural Mountains, which, again, there's fewer people there. So, like, up until you hit the Urals, it's clear running. You can start doing stuff. Once you hit them, it's like, well, my cost to gain ratio goes way down. So now I'm probably going to fight with Volkov and Thrachen instead of pressing even farther into Asia.
Nice. So Deanna, can you, looking at the map specifically, what are we looking at here?
It's a mess.
Poor Tharkold.
Yeah. It was actually the hardest map for me to make, and the big reason was that Isle was there, and we have a restriction that Stellae must be within 300 miles or 500 kilometers of another Stella to connect to it, but also each individual Stella can only connect to 6 others. And so a lot of what happens really depends on when the Stellae are put down. And so I had to actually start going, okay, this one comes first and this one comes next, and then make sure that there's no connections being made with Isle, because if they do, then I have to start making mixed zones. And as it turns out, there are 2 areas that are kind of really weird. Now, one of them I think is filled in that shouldn't be on this map. And that's the one that's in the North Baltic Sea there near Finland. And that one is because one of the zones would end up being connected to 7 other Stellae. And then that's the same thing for the one just in the Baltic Sea just north of Poland, where, again, even though the Stella is close enough to connect it, it would force somebody's Stella to connect to 7, and so it just doesn't connect at all. And so we've got these little core Earth areas that I have quadruple checked, and I'm absolutely positively sure that it works, and I'm positive I'm going to be wrong.
well, and the great thing too is, like, this all converted then right back into story element, and that's why Euthorian and Isle is so irritated at Tharkold in general and everyone in it, because it's like, hey, like, we had a plan, man. Like, we had these things all lined up, and now you guys are just plunking these things down everywhere, and half of my stuff now don't work, and I can't take territory I was supposed to because you guys screwed everything up. And it's like, that made, and like adding that drama kind of between them is great, and we've been trying to ramp that up, right? It's like, So we all know eventually the High Lords are going to start fighting each other. And it's like, this is one of those big hot spots where it's like, Thorian is just like, like, he probably would have attacked Kernan himself, except Jezreel beat him to it. And now they've got to wait and say, like, well, I don't even know who I'm attacking. What's going on? You know?
So,
well, and we actually,
in the chat,
we actually have. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
We actually have a map that was basically what the High Lords agreed to when invading, and Thorian was supposed to get that northern part of Russia, and he wasn't able to get it because the blasted land. And so he didn't know what, he was like, whoa, I don't know what I want to do, like whether or not I want to even touch like that stuff right now. And then by the time he might have gone, okay, it's safe, Thrachin goes and says, okay, fine, because these people have like Volkov and Jezreel and Thrachin, they didn't agree to anything that the High Lords agreed to.
Right.
And so they're just ignoring the agreements.
So in the chat, Ervetson says, can you give any additional information about the Tharkold Isle mix zones? My players happen to be headed to Tallinn, Estonia on Monday.
So the biggest thing about them is demons love them, right? So demons are magical creatures, and they're one of the tricks in Tharkold is the magic there is fading slowly but surely, and as magic declines, it becomes less and less pleasant for the demons. And then right next door, you've got these two areas, Cyber Papacy and Isle, that both have magic coming out of their ears, and so Isle's got more magic, and Cyber Papacy's got world laws that make things nicer for demons. So like all the demons in Tharkold are like, man, I know where my summer vacation home is going. And in a mixed zone, that they thrive, right? They're like, this is the best place ever. It's got all of the stuff that I'm used to, plus this huge magic and these other crazy world laws that make life better for me. So when you go into those zones, they are demon central, and not necessarily like demons doing missions, because it's like, hey, we got a job to do, and it's back over here. Those neutral zones are where demons go to just chill. Like this is where I'm gonna go have fun and get my evil on. This is great. Like I'm not supposed to be here. I went AWOL to be here. Like that's what I would say is your major thing in those mixed zones.
Nice. How about you, Deanna?
He's right. No, well, see, the dirty little thing here is that I actually was not too much involved with Tharkold, so I'm mostly just cleaning a few things up at the end. So it's Darrell and John Watson did most of the hard work on designing this place.
It's not hard work. I'm just breaking stuff. I'm Jezreel. I'm Jezreel in this equation. Like whatever, I attack it. What happens? Poor John's the one that's got he's got to be our Volkov that's like trying to keep everything together, and the Deanna's just like cleaning up the debris. Like like what happened here? Why did you burn this to the ground? It's like it's Tharkold, baby. That's what we do.
Nice. So tell us about actually how you made this map. Like, do you just gotta use Photoshop, or like what do you use to make these maps?
This is actually using Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a Google Drive, and I basically just built a map, and it actually has a pretty good ruler, and it can make polygons very easily, and you can call them different things and give them different colors and give them different shadings, and it's actually pretty easy. That said, with few exceptions, I am not usually caring too much about exactly where the stellae go. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily near anything important or anything like that. The way that we sort of say it is that if there's something close by that you want to make it be where the stellae is, go ahead.
And that was on and partially on purpose too, because one of the things that we've kind of always wanted to do, but there's never been like quite the right mechanism for it. But I always thought it would be fun. So we know, and we know the Stella are somewhere in this area, right? And by somewhere, it's like this is like 100 miles wide. There's a lot of territory in here that this could be. Like, we don't know it exactly because neither does the Delphi Council, right? It's like they know how reality mechanics work. They know it's got to be in there somewhere, but if they knew exactly where, it's pretty easy to find it and pull it. And then again, that creates drama. Like, hey, we got to send a mission. Go find it, right? And once we find it, scout it out. What are its defenses? Once we know that, okay, now charge up the area. Now we can pull it. Like, it's this multi-things. If we knew all that information beforehand, then it's like, well, why don't we just pull it, right? We've had a couple glory events. Let's just do this and get it over with. So layers of adventure, right? And one of the things I always wanted to do was have kind of a contest or whatever where people in the area, kind of like geocaching or whatever, would be like, go find the Stella in real life. Because there's a lot of weird stuff in the world, right? You know, anywhere you go, and we do this all the time, where you'll just see like, you know, that one, you know, phone pole or statue or whatever, and it's 100 miles from anything, and you're like, what is that even doing out here?
Yeah, right.
That's a Stella, right? You know, or, you know, like, I always wanted to find some way to incorporate that. Like, everyone in those places could be like, oh no, I've seen the Stella. I know exactly where it is. Boom, you know, here's a picture. And I think that would be cool, but it requires a level of community organization that I am not capable of.
Yeah, that would be cool. Definitely something to think about. Let's see, in the chat, Grey March 2000 asks, are you sticking with blue for Tharkold Realm instead of gray? Seems kind of similar to the Nile Empire color.
Should be gray.
Yeah. Yeah, this is just stuff that I used for in the program.
Yeah, and also the other thing that's different in the map is it is color coded rather than gray. It's because it's important to know which of the three factions is controlling what area. Mm-hmm. So in the new map, rather than gray everywhere, it's, hey, we've assigned colors to Thrachin, to Volkov, to Jezreel, so you can know, you know.
Okay. Let's see. There were some questions about psionics, and let's kind of go over that real quick. So it looks like it says MJ Roger. Oh, so this is Michael Roderick, I would assume. So it says
hey.
looks like the Tharkold don't really use psionics much. Do they dislike it? And then there was more comments about, you know, that how you talked about it in one of the previews that psionics was unique to the race in humans, and Michael says, I saw that, I was just wondering why. So, like, why don't the humans use or know or care about psionics?
Yeah, so one of the distinctions that we try to make is, like, and this was sort of an early design choice, right? There's a whole lot of precedence on this, so I'll try and kind of go through it one at a time. Early design choice, is psionics tied to the social axiom or not? And what we ended up deciding is, yeah, they should be, right? Like, it makes sense in terms of, you know, matching to magic, matching to faith. It's like, yeah, the more people come together, that's where these, you know, telepathic utopias come from, right? And then you got a problem, because in the old games, like, well, there were a lot of psychics in Tharkold, but as originally defined, Tharkold should not have a good social axiom. So what's up with that? And the choice that we made was, the axiom is based on, you've got two major species on this world, right? And the race, they are achieving that cooperation and that sort of almost utopian, you know, come-togetherness that's giving them this psychic energy. But that is absolutely not true for the Tharkoldu, for the demons, right? Like, they're dog eat dog, they're every man for himself. if it was nothing but demons, they would have a social axiom of like 12, 13, 14, right? So it's not that they can't be psychic, but like that as a culture, that's not their thing, right? They like dark magic. They like, these cybernetics, and it's kind of weird when they get those powers, right? Whereas, meanwhile, it's something they absolutely are terrified of. If they knew the race could do it, they would just kill them. Like, not just the psychics, like all of them. They're like, nope, never mind. It's not worth having slaves if they can do this. Bye. Wham. Right? And that's why the race has been so careful to hide that this is something they could do until this moment where they've got this opportunity to have a real uprising, right? Like, for hundreds of years, they've died rather than display what they can do. And meanwhile, those powers have enabled them to connect with one another, despite the horrible society and the constriction that they've faced. Like, this is what's kind of kept their culture alive in that period, and they've made sacrifices along the way. Like, yeah, you maybe could get out of this tight spot by using your mind bolt, but then they know you got mind bolts. So then they know we've got mind bolts. So don't do it. Just die. For like 100 years, that's the choice that they've made. And when this invasion happens and goes so bad and so many of them get away, all right, gloves are off. Like, this is the moment. Boom. Sai comes out of the closet, and it's a shock to the Tharkoldu too. Like, and this is also why it doesn't have a major impact on the Tharkoldu society when the war starts, because it's this hidden thing, right? Like, they don't have rules on built around it yet, because it wasn't supposed to be there. Now that it's out in the open, that's got to develop, but it was a conscious effort to say, no, this is something that was completely hidden before and is just now coming out. And the techno demons are not happy about it.
Nice. Let's see. Cubivore 1975 asks, are there considerations around Russian organized crime in the power games in Tharkoldu, Russia?
Yes. So they were flat out mentioned in the original core book, so we definitely couldn't drop them, and nor did we intend to. They thrive mostly in the areas where Jezreel's wrecking stuff, because she's not interested in organizing what's left over, and they definitely are. And some of them also have ties to what's going on in Volkov's area. The only place they don't have as much to do is with Thrachin, because it's like the soil there is so barren, their seeds can't grow.
Right. And let's see.
I think we actually outlined 3 different sort of minor organizations and where they live in the book, like what they do. Some of them are just gangs, some of them are a little more refined, and because we want that variety, right? That variety exists in real life too.
Let's see, Cubivore 1975. Oh no, that was the same one we just asked. So D. Riesland asks, how much of the telekinesis mess is getting fixed in the source book?
I'll take that one, because that's mine. I don't know yet. We've currently got it in the errata. Originally, I didn't like how much it made. It was difficult to sort of rule on how it actually worked, and it basically did too much all at once, especially at Social 23. It was like as if you took, as telekinesis, it basically encompasses pretty much the entire, discipline. So originally what we did was we cut it back so that it was only, you couldn't fly with it, and you could only lift, but only lift as high as you could do it if you were physically doing it, just doing it with your mind. but especially after looking at the psionics that we had in Tharkold, now that we finally, have a source book that expands the number of powers and stuff like that, I realized that the original power still could fit, but if we made the Axiom 25 instead, and then we wouldn't have to actually change any of the text in the actual power, and at the same time we modified the falling damage table so that it's not as extreme. And so we actually, by taking care of one section of the rules, that kind of fixed the big problem with this power. Whether or not we do it in the source book will depend on space. If we've got space, then we'll probably put it in, but right now I would say probably not. We'll probably just stay as errata at this point. But at some point in the future, we will be doing some sort of, magic, like Pixod's Practical Grimoire and stuff for the clerics, and we've got, the core of the source book coming at some point, and maybe we do more for that. But yeah, it depends on the space whether or not we can do that.
Makes sense.
Whatever, y'all are cray cray.
Michael asks, follow up with Darrell's.
To be mixed up. All right, sorry, go on.
Follow up with Darrell's mention of the race cooperation with spiritual axiom drop from Torg to Torg Eternity. Where to go? Do philosophies become important? I'm thinking of the way of the race.
Yeah. So, and this was another thing. Like in the original Torg, demons had miracles, and we're like, no, it should be the opposite, right? Like faith should just be crumbling and gone, in Tharkold. Like no one prays to anything there. And that was a conscious decision to drop that, and so they've got the philosophies in there, but those philosophies don't provide miracles. They just don't. Like the way is still a thing, and they follow it, and that philosophy is why, they make that sacrifice, right? Like I will die so that others, can hide this power, and we can carry on, right? We'll keep living this miserable life, waiting for that moment, and it might take generations, it might never come, but we're going to survive in the meantime. That's where that philosophy exists, but it doesn't carry power of its own, only the power to motivate.
Nice. And then we've got Prince Earwig, who asks, how much expansion of the realm occurred between day 90 and the beta primer mentioned 30 days at the end of day 465?
So so in the beta primer we gave a preview, like here's what's coming.
About 365.
And I can't, and I know in the primer we said they're pushing out, but I don't think we wanted to spoil that Cronod was dead at that point.
No.
I think we said yes, they're expanding out, but we left it vague on why. So essentially, we did know, but we didn't want to spoil it. Maybe we did. I think we mentioned that Cronod was dead, because I remember some people were like, "What? Come on, how's Jezreel punking this 12-foot tall demon?" It's like it's not just Jezreel.
And the other thing that's important too about the primers is that they're still digital only products, and so they're still mostly guidelines.
Yeah.
If nothing's broken, or if we don't have good ideas, that's what we'll do. But if we have ideas, or there's something that needs to be changed to fit something that works better, then we'll go and do that. For instance, the cyber papacy in the primer, it expands to Brazil, but it didn't expand to Argentina at all. But then I went down to Argentina last fall, and I said, I am not going to miss this opportunity to include some stuff for the cyber papacy from Buenos Aires. And so we've tweaked that a little.
Yeah, right. But in broad strokes, it's like we wanted to tell people they're expanding to South America, and that's true, right? So there will be all these details, that might get. But the original, it was 3 paragraphs that said, "Big picture, this is what's going on, and that we've stuck to. Right? That's still the plan, you know.
Yeah.
But those are like there'll be like minor tweaks and stuff that maybe if you really looked at that primer and it's like, but there's a sentence here that says this, no, then it got overridden or whatever. But I think you'd have to look pretty hard. The broad strokes are what we were going for, and the broad strokes are. I
seem to recall somebody pointing out to me that there was something in the cyber papacy that we ended up contradicting by accident. But
that sounds like a you problem.
Nice. So we've got about looks like 20 more minutes. So if you've got some questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Let's see. Coral Blue says, speaking of psionics, we don't have an important psychic power, teleport, yet. Will it be covered in Tharkold?
I don't remember. I think no. So like, there are a few rules of thumb that we follow, and like you notice, we don't have a magical we do have a magical teleport, and I had to fight for it, right? But it was super limited. I was like, I really want this, like the portal one, like just so we've got something to do it. But like regular teleportation, kind of from day one, we had a rule: do not do it. And the biggest reason not to is we don't want to short circuit adventure. Half the adventures are getting there, and if you've got a power that says I get there, it's like, well, I'll just throw away that half of the book.
Yeah, we did end up doing one for Isle, but it is really hard to do, and it has some serious drawbacks.
Yeah, exactly. We put some limits on it to so that would happen, you know, right? Yeah. And with a psionic version of teleport, like those limits don't make as much sense, so we probably won't go there.
Yeah, and I mean, even if we did, it would be social 26 or 27 or 28 or something like that. I mean, theoretically it's possible, but
theoretically at 20, theoretically at 27 and 28, there's not a game anymore. It's
right? Yeah, what? Yeah.
Like we're just kind of sitting around a table talking and saying what happens at 27 and 28.
It's like time travel for the tech axiom. I mean, it's possible to do it, but nobody in the game can do it. So,
and once it comes out, it's like, we'll put the dice away. 29 says we're not rolling for stuff. I'm just writing like, hey, this is what happens. Okay, cool.
Yeah. What was that game? Everyway, right?
Everyway. I remember that. Yeah.
So let's see. Grey March says, how much Pav Scum Tharkoldu dialect will we be seeing?
Almost none, actually.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing a lot in the source book.
Yeah. So sorry, fans of that. Like.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, if we have fiction or something like that would come up there, but
we were leaning more into, we wanted to lean more into the Russian background, you know, rather than the kind of, you know, like original, you know, setting it in LA and with the hard edges and all that is kind of meant to be more like Blade Runner essentially, and we're definitely not Blade Runner, you know, in the new one. Now, you could make a case that Blasted Land is exactly where that kind of thing would show up. Like that it could be, but that's not something we've gone into too much depth in. So, sorry.
Zervalican says, you changed my mind. I wanted Cranod to stay, but the three-way fight is so cool. I ended up changing it in my home game to fit Eternity.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, and I get you, right? Because Cranod is one of those kind of criminally underused High Lords. Like, he shows up, and he seems so scary and badass, and then he just gets murdered, and you're like, wait, what? Like, what happened to this guy? And he's one of my favorites because I love the Techno Demons because they're so scary powerful, but they're also so manageable because they're so lazy, you know? like this is me as a High Lord, like, whatever, that sounds hard. How about we'll just kind of mess around and have fun instead, you know? And that irritates everyone around them, but like you've got all this, you know, capacity for drama. And like I have felt people when we did the primer saying, yeah, by the way, like we're gonna cycle him out. Like if you were expecting him to do better this time around, sorry, you know. And yeah, people were duly upset about that, and I get it. But yeah, the story potential of this whole knife fight between Volkov, who kind of came out of nowhere as like our dark horse villain, you know, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of paragraphs about him, and like, yeah, it's kind of Vladimir Putin and all that. But just like the more stuff we like assigned to him, like, yeah, and he nukes this storm bridge, and he does this, and he does that, and it was like, you know, like this guy's probably more interesting than Jezreel or most of the other villains. Kind of come out of nowhere for that. And then the other thing is, one thing we're definitely doing this different this time, spoiler or not, and you guys know when I get in these chats, I'll spoil anything.
Oh, no!
Yeah, right? Like, in the old one, they also punk the Gaunt Man, and Thrachin takes over. And that is absolutely not happening this time, right? Gaunt Man's the big bad. Like, I'm sorry, he's our iconic villain. He is not going out like a punk, you know? And that means, well, what do we do with Thrachin? And it's like, well, Thrachin's got a home, right? Like, he seems like a weird fit for Rorsch anyway. Like, if he's working for the Gaunt Man, great. Gaunt Man wants this problem in Tharkold fixed. He's got his guy for that, right? So Thrachin, here's your job. Go do it, buddy. You know? And that put him back into play in an interesting way. And it makes Jezreel work for it. And hilariously, you know, we talk about stuff we plan versus stuff we don't plan. We planned that there would be this Civil War throwdown. Originally, I had it between Volkov and Jezreel, and Thrachin was not involved. Then we kind of like, I ended up using Thrachin in something as a throwaway, and I'm like, wait, actually he's pretty powerful. He should probably be involved in this. All right, my bad. Like, let's do more with him there. And that really crystallized it and made it interesting. And then the other thing is, I did not set who won it.
Yeah.
It could have gone in any one of the three directions. I think all three of them have very interesting repercussions on year two. And when we do our Gen Con backer games, one of the things that we try to do is make those games highly impactful of the canon verse, you know, universe. And so we settled it at the table. We wrote an adventure that was essentially put the Storm Knights right on the tip of the spear at this point where they can make a choice that's going to shift the balance of power in favor of one of those three. And it's brutal because there is no good answer. Like, you kind of got to choose, like, all right, which is the lesser of three evils here? I mean, and they're all pretty dang evil, you know. And yeah, I'll save it for the book what they chose, or
Yeah.
maybe we've spoiled that already. But
I don't think we have.
I don't think
we
so,
took
yeah.
tight-lipped on that one.
yeah.
I'm
But
kind of like, no, I think this one I want to keep quiet for a little while. I mean, we give out a lot, but I think this one I kind of like, you know, we know and nobody else knows.
And here's what I will spoil: it does come down differently than it did in original Torg.
Alright. So
Did not go the
Cubivore
same way.
Cubivore asks, says, help me pitch Tharkold to my players. What sort of game are we getting here? Hellraiser, Mad Max, techno horror, Game of Thrones? I end up rambling when I try to explain it. Any help is appreciated.
Yeah. No, so when we were designing it, so here's my latest pitch. You know, this this is adventure in a world where it's been 2020 for the last century or so. And to me, like, that's like the kind of the Russian mindset, right? Like, we're like, oh man, 2020, and they're like, dude, like, this has been us for like at least 100 years, maybe more. I don't know what you are all going on about, you know.
Yeah, the part I love the most is the fact that actually is a world law.
Yeah, right? Right, because it fits. Like, it's so Russian, you know, like, it's just a very cynical place. But so our elevator pitch, you know, describing it as things were by other things, is it is the meeting of Hellraiser, Mad Max, and Eastern Promises. Like, it is the intersection where those three things meet. And if that works for you, awesome. If not, we had a better pitch, like in our the preview. Actually, I thought did a really good job of saying this is what Tharkold is and why it's its own flavor. It's not really this mixture of these other things, but yeah, it's all about that cynical, dark, dog eat dog, heavy metal, whips and chains, baby. Like, that's Tharkold, right? And you're gonna adventure there. It's gonna get rough. Like, that would be my new pitch. It's gonna get rough.
It's gonna get rough. Nice. All right, so let's see. I don't know. I lost it, but somebody had asked what your favorite foes are. However, I'm gonna ask you to actually hold those because looks like we just passed 60,000 in the crowdfunding. So we're at right now 60,774. But what that does is it unlocks our next Q&A. So the next Q&A is where'd it go? Right there. The next is where is it? Major? Nope. Oh, well, we got to do major players of Tharkold first. And then the next one after that is Common Threats of Tharkold, which is what we just unlocked for 60,000. So we're going to have major players of Tharkold, probably sometime early next week. And then we'll see when we get to the Common Threats of Tharkold.
Cool. We'll try and get John on for those too, because he did a lot with this.
Yeah, we'll get him on playing a little bit further ahead this time. It happened so quick this time. We were like, I guess we're doing this now.
Thank you all for that.
Yes,
right?
yes,
thank
for
you
sure.
all for that. Like if we're a little bit like, oh my God, I'm like, all right, thanks everyone. We threw a party and we didn't know if everyone would come, especially because Cyber Papacy's still shipping. But
real soon.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, like people that are waiting for news on that, like so are we. Right? Like we've seen boxes, the last components are in, stuff is in, is moving, but I have not yet gotten the thing that we always wait for is Studio 2 has crates. As soon as Studio 2 has crates, now we know North America is getting it within a week, I haven't gotten that notice yet. As soon as I do, Greg will share it, or I will, or probably Greg. But when we don't, we can speculate. We can be like, yeah, it's moving, but we've been burned on speculation enough times. So now we're kind of shy about guessing. So apologies everyone that's kind of waiting. And if you're hesitating and don't want to, jump in on Tharkold until Cyber Papacy arrives, totally get it. Like, we've debated quite a while on whether to go or to wait. And we said, well, like, we've waited so long, we've got to just go. And well, the other thing is, how like the toast never pops up until you look away. Sometimes, like, well, it never arrives until we do the next crowdfunding. So we're like, well, let's do the crowdfunding, and maybe it'll just appear. Yeah. And I think that's going to happen, actually. Like, I think stuff's going to go out like that soon. So those of you waiting patiently or impatiently, apologies soon.
Yep. Let's see. All the Ampersand says, how prevalent is magic in Tharkold now? It seems more of how demons do things rather than something everybody embraces, like an Isle. The Freedom Magic list hinted that it does get used, though.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yeah, right. So the idea is magic is what demons do, and it draws their attention. So anyone can use magic, but if you're using magic, you are drawing attention from demons, and they're like, dude, that's like our thing. I'm going to, torture you and kill you now. So you got to be very, very careful if you're a mage in Tharkold, and that's why the race doesn't tend to use magic, because it's like, cool, let's use magic. It's like, all right. The next day, there's a billion techno demons on top of you, so it's like, okay, let's not.
Yeah,
and
that is going to be handled with Cosm cards now. We've got Cosm cards that actually deal with the consequences of screwing that up.
Yeah, and they add to that, right? Like the original rule is still in place; it's still there, but Cosm cards expand and make it even more like, oh, yep, use it, but it's risky.
Mm-hmm.
And even demons don't always use magic, right? Because they're lazy. Like if a demon wants to be a mage, he will absolutely be a mage, and he's got all these powers and all that. But most of them are like, or I could just like get a cannon, and then I don't have to like learn stuff from books.
Yeah.
That's better for me. Like that works better with my busy schedule. So let's do that.
So,
Yeah, and magic is there for, it's mostly for players to be a Tharkold magic user, but not be a demon. It is by no means common at all.
So we have Malgust in the chat, and Malgust.
Uh-oh. See, that's
says,
it. We used too much magic, and now we're done for it.
Says, great job so far on shaping the world. Looking forward to running some adventures in Tharkold. And then Michael asks, question on aspirants. Why would the Delphi Council trust them? Also, is the preview the final version? It seems a little OP.
So, they don't trust them, but, like, so there's all these negatives to an aspirant. And originally, I didn't want to do them at all. Like, and this is one of those sort of philosophical questions where I was like, well, demons are evil. Like, in the original and this is a change from original Tharkold. In original Tharkold, they were a species. You know, they were born in, you know, the world had two conflicting races, right? You know, these demons and the race. And, you know, much like humans and Neanderthals, and they're battling it out, da-da-da-da-da. And in the end, one becomes dominant and one the other. And the reason I didn't do that is because, like, well, we're making demons pretty evil, right? Like, as a species, they're horrible. And I always like, especially because you can summon them with dark magic and all that. So we pursued the, you know, in all of the cosms, the notion that demons, what they come from is they are bad thoughts given physical form by magic. Right? That's what they are. So they're just bad to the core. They're a bad idea, right? And so originally I was like, that should never be able to be a good guy, a player character. Like, we shouldn't go there. And this is something that John fought for, and actually he made a good case for him. And I started to come around on it, and I said, well, what you tack is the story. Like, what's the story? And it's a very interesting story to say, like, okay, this thing is supernatural evil. And it's got all of the things that go with that, right? And they can be very negative things. Like, well, I can't cross these barriers. Like, I can't do, like, all of these things. Like, that, and also, no one's going to trust me. And they shouldn't, right? Because it's evil. But can something that starts off so bad change? And if it can, what does that mean for everyone else? And, you know, and so, like, you look at all the horrible stuff that's going on right now, right? And to me, the most interesting stories are, to me, the most interesting thing that's happened in any protest in the last 2 years was where you got, like, the angry white supremacist is screaming at the protester, and the protester just hugs him, and within 2 minutes the screaming white supremacist is bawling, right? Like, he's just crying, and he doesn't, right? And, like, there's all that hate kind of being let go, and you go, well, wait, something important just happened there, right? Like, now you not only have one less screaming guy, but you have one more protester, because he's essentially crossed the line. That's a type of good that's, like, it's a big deal. Can that happen with demons? And then if it can, early on as gamers, like, the nice thing is it's really easy to justify destroying a demon, right? It's like, that's a bad thought given form. Like, I punch it. Like, there's nothing else to do here. When you add this other element of these aspirants, like, wait, these guys are trying to do better and maybe failing, but they're trying. Do we have to change our approach to demons as a whole? I think that's fascinating. And I think people have been, like, kind of like, hey, are we going to have guidance on this? And I'm like, I think that's a personal choice. Like I think that's something like that's a philosophical dilemma that we're just going to put in front of you, and you can deal with it or not. But I think it says something about us, and that's why I wanted to do it. So it's like, ooh, that's an interesting moral conversation. Let's have that conversation. Overpowered, I thought we put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, we tweaked it a fair bit. The final preview is, I think, the final version. But the thing I want to emphasize, though, is that its drawback of having a hand size of one less.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big.
And so I think that even if it maybe is a little bit more powerful, I don't think it'll be too long as the game progresses before that kind of gets in the wash. Like the noise is too much that sort of thing would be. Let's put it this way: I don't think that an aspirant player is going to dominate.
Yeah, anyone who's ever played without cards or with fewer cards knows what a big deal having a limited hand size is.
Yeah.
And the other fun thing is, and that's also like super appropriate to like the mechanical reality of Torg, right? Because that's the difference between Storm Knights and Stormers. Stormers are kind of evil. They don't get a hand. They're not player characters, right? So if you get a hand, you're a good guy. And so we're like, oh, cool. Like this is a good way to show that these guys are not. They're getting there, but they're not good. They've got these smaller hands to show. Yeah, only good guys get four
get a full hand, right? So we're running on about time. There's looks like we get one more question here, and that is, when do the aspirants start showing up? They say, I'm planning to run an adventure that briefly passes through the English Channel, and I'd like to have a party run into one, but I don't know how well that lines up with the timeline.
Yeah,
pretty early.
Yeah, so I think you can easily make the case that aspirants could have existed at any point in Tharkold. They don't have fertile ground to grow. Like one of them goes, this might be a good idea, and then 99 techno demons just tear them to pieces because they figure it out, right? Only when things are very chaotic like they are now do they get a chance to move away to that summer home or whatever and be like, okay, wait, like I've had a chance to think about this, and I've had interactions with these humans beyond enslaving them. Like, and I think part of the trigger is even just working with Volkov's Russians, right? Where they've kind of got these mixed, this mixed force where it'd be like, you've got a techno demon partnered with like a KGB, or I'm sorry, the modern equivalent of the KGB guy, like as a Boris and Natasha like coming around. Yeah. That's going to affect both of them in certain ways. So I think you can, like, my commandment would be do what's best for the story. So like if you need one, man, boom, do one. Like that's cool. Like they could have existed anywhere. I don't think they become calm enough to be a thing until really the Civil War portion of it gets going. Like that's when things are fractured enough that there's not a single command structure, and it's easier for a techno demon to be like, actually I'm working for them. Well, actually I'm working for them, and they've told all three sides that, and they're really not working for any of the three, but it's not like they can cross-check, right?
Nice. All right, well, I think that is where we'll call it for today. Next week we'll be back with another live Q&A, this one for major players of Tharkold. What do you think those major players are? Is it more than Thrachin, Volkov, and Jezreel? Are there more major players?
It's kind of got to be now because I spent so much time talking about those three in this one. Sorry. We'll find new elements to add. Maybe we'll talk some more about some of the organized crime and some of the other factions that throw in on either side. And we'll talk more about Volkov because he's an interesting guy.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Deanna. Thank you, Darrell, for joining me here. I've learned a lot for sure, and I hope everybody in the chat. Thank you for asking your questions. And again, we'll see you sometime, probably next week, early next week. For now, if you've not backed, go ahead and go to GameOnTabletop.com and search for the Tharkold crowdfunding. and help us smash through those stretch goals.
And thank you everyone for your support, both in being here even on short notice, and following the campaign and all that. Couldn't do it without you, Storm Knights. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
And if you're just joining us and you missed it, I'll get this up on YouTube right away, so you can see it from the beginning. But that's it. I'm Robert Adichie for Ulysses Spiel, Ulysses International. Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye.